Thank you, Chairman, and fellow members of the conference. It's been an interesting week last week in the Senate. I've just completed last week a bipartisan markup on a contentious issue in the Help Committee, with the result there of a 22-0 bipartisan vote on a new Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We have just witnessed a unanimous bipartisan result in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations on another difficult and contentious question. We have before us, as a conference, the bipartisan and bicameral record of the Ryan-Murray negotiations. We even, in a bipartisan and bicameral way, just resolved the annoying annual ritual of the doc fix. So bipartisanship and progress are possible, but apparently not in the Budget Committee. This budget effort has been a partisan ramrod. Even today's formality is not even a token effort at bipartisanship. When I've said my piece here this morning, we're all done. Republicans can ram their budget through, so they will ram their budget through, and that is that. The problem is that this has made the budget process ridiculous. Nobody cares. Virtually nobody came to our hearings and markups. Nobody cares about the result. Appropriations now have to pass the Senate by 60 votes. So even the 60-vote budget point of order is meaningless, which is not surprising since, unlike those other legislative successes, none of the hard work of accommodation and compromise went into this budget. The partisan ramrod of an effort has produced a foreseeable result. A budget so bad that if it were applied to actual appropriated accounts, I doubt even most Republicans would vote for it. If Republicans did actually apply this budget, once the American people got a good look at its extremism and its favoritism, I suspect it would put a quick end to the Republican majorities. What will happen instead is that our Republican friends will ask President Obama to bail them out by negotiating them out of this dreadful hole they've dug for themselves. If it weren't for the price regular families would have to pay, it would almost be worth letting Republicans have to apply this budget just to educate the American people. Deficit hawks will say that this is strong medicine but necessary to avoid future fiscal catastrophe. No one should believe it. In fact, the deficit hawks themselves don't believe it. It's a foil for attacking programs like Medicare and Pell Grants and food stamps. There is a test that proves what I say. Look at all the federal benefits that help the rich and the powerful. Those benefits tend to come through the tax code. Indeed, almost as much revenue flows out the back door of the tax code in loopholes, favored rates, and deductions than actually gets collected by the government and spent. Name one special interest tax benefit that was reduced to address the deficit. Big oil gets massive and completely unnecessary tax benefits. Do we ask them to sacrifice one dime toward this terrible deficit? Not one dime. Hedge fund billionaires pay lower federal tax rates than truck drivers and brick masons. Do we ask them to sacrifice one dime toward this supposedly terrible deficit? Not one dime. Even private jets get special tax benefits in the tax code. Do we ask the private jet set to contribute anything? Not a dime. Many American corporations hide revenue overseas or use other tricks and loopholes so that they don't pay taxes. In some cases, big corporations pay literally zero federal corporate income tax. Do we close one corporate tax loophole in this budget? Not a one. Indeed, the House just voted to add $300 billion to the deficit by bailing out the long-suffering top 0.2% wealthiest American families from having to pay any estate tax. Republicans are threatening to use the OCO gimmick to load up the defense contractors, in some cases even beyond what the military is asking for. And there's a verbal budget gimmick the Republicans have plugged into this budget that will allow them to raise the deficit in fast-track reconciliation bills. Why, if people are sincere about reducing the deficit, would Republicans need to put in a special budget gimmick to let them increase the deficit? The truth is that Republican concern about the deficit evaporates around wealth and power. It's big talk until they get near the rich and until they get near the powerful, and then it's like this budget, a big nothing in terms of deficit savings. This budget is a stark display, I believe, of that bias and that injustice. I don't see any remedy for it in this Ramrod process, but I hope that when we get to appropriations and actually funding the country, we'll come to a more sensible middle ground. Thank you.